Hey guys, it's Sunny Brigham. I don't know why I always say before my name. Maybe I should change it and put the A before my name. I don't know, that might be too complicated. Anywho, so it's Tuesday, which means we chat. Oh, I have something in my glasses. So it's like a glare or something. Anywho. So tonight we are talking coffee. We're talking about coffee and we're talking about is it bad for us? What's interesting is, and I'm pulling my tea, I have tea, not coffee, is I wrote about coffee like maybe a year ago, close to a year ago. And I thought, man, I must have had it all wrong because I went to a nutrition conference in Seattle last month, and it was all about nutrigenomics. So lots of stuff about genetic information and how food can impact those genes, or how those genes can impact the foods that we eat. And so I learned some stuff about caffeine metabolism, and I thought, oh my God, this is so interesting. So I'm like, I'm going to write a blog about it. And last week when I went to go write the blog, I pulled up my other one, and sure enough, I had already written on the blog. I had already written about the genetic impact of our genes on caffeine metabolism. And so I thought, well, let me just update it and expand a little bit, because there was some things that I had left out of that blog. And so that's what we are here tonight to chit chat about, is basically how fast or slow we metabolize caffeine, and are there any negative health effects of that? And I titled it, is coffee bad? Because coffee tends to be the biggest contributor to caffeine in the diet. The more coffee you have, the more caffeine you're going to have. The lighter roast, the more caffeine in the coffee. And then obviously, if you're shooting down 6-7 espressos a day, you're going to have quite a bit of caffeine as well. And then we'll talk about areas or foods that have caffeine that we don't necessarily always think about when we think about caffeine. Most people, when you say caffeine, you immediately go to like sodas, energy drinks, and coffee. And so tonight, like I said, we're going to talk about genes and caffeine metabolism. If this is your first time hanging with me on a Tuesday, you might be able to hear my dogs in the background. If this is your first time with me, my name is Sunny Brigham. I'm a board certified clinical and integrative nutritionist, and I have a master's of science in clinical nutrition, and I do all things gut health and hormones. That's sort of my specialty. But I dabble in lots of different areas, especially when it comes to genes, because it's so super interesting. How can you not be interested in genes and how our foods can affect those, good, bad, or otherwise? Okay, so I have the Blogadoo posted. I never know this. Is it off the top for you guys, the bottom, side, somewhere around your screen is the blog. If you haven't read it yet, wait until the live's over and then jump over there and read it. You might learn something pretty interesting that you can throw in your coworkers' faces when you guys are hanging around the coffee machine in the morning. Something like, well, how fast or slow? Hey, buddy. How fast or slow do you metabolize that caffeine? It might not be very good for you. This is Captain Beauregard Wigglepants. He's my little buddy. Say hi to everybody. And yes, I talk like a little baby to my doggies. I swear I'd never be that person. I don't call him a fur baby, though. I draw the line there. Okay, so let's chat about the blog. He's so cute, isn't he? He's just so cute. Okay, so let's see where to start. Oh, that's my nose. Okay, so when we talk about genes, right, we have 2 copies of every gene that we have. We get one from our mother, one from our father. And so those 2 copies tell us how that gene works in the body. So it can be completely normal, it can be heterozygous, or it can be homozygous. Heterozygous means that you have one bad copy of the gene. And homozygous means that you have 2 bad copies of the gene. And I say bad because they're not always bad. They're sometimes just different. Like in the instance of caffeine metabolism. You might be homozygous, which means you have 2 bad copies, but they're not actually bad. So when we talk about it, you'll notice that if you are homozygous for the genetic mutation of caffeine metabolism. That's not necessarily a bad thing, especially if you're a coffee lover, but that's just kind of what it is. So just know that when I start saying like heterozygous and homozygous are normal, that's what that means. And if you guys have any questions, Kim said he loves giving kisses. He does. He's my little buddy. If you guys have any questions as we're chatting, just post them in the comments below and I'll make sure that I answer them. If you're watching this after the fact, you can post them in there as well. I do monitor the comments after the live is finished, and I will make sure that I answer them for you. Okay, so let's talk genetics. Okay, there's a specific gene. It's called CYP1A2. So anytime you see a gene that starts with CYP, I immediately think liver metabolism. So we do a lot of things through the liver. If I see anything that starts with CYP, I immediately think, okay, this is affecting the liver in some way, shape, or form. It's how fast or slow we're metabolizing medications. And in this instance, we have CYP1A2, which is how fast we metabolize caffeine through the body. If you have ever done anything like Ancestry DNA or 23andMe, whether you know it or not, you have access to what's called a raw data file. And you can Google, like if you have 23andMe and you're like, oh, I didn't know I had raw data. You can just Google how to download your raw data, and it's pretty easy. Same thing with Ancestry. If you've ever done any of that, it's a text file and it's got a whole bunch of crazy numbers in it. It's your genetic makeup. That's what's kind of making you who you are. So if you have that, you can pop in what's called the RS code. And so if you're curious, as we talk, if you're fast or slow metabolizer for caffeine, you can pop in the code. It's RS 762551. I know it's a crazy number, but again, the blog is linked here. So you can click the link to the blog afterwards, and then it'll open up and you'll be able to find the RS code in the blog. So if you pull up your gene and you see the number C, or the letters CC, that means that you're within the majority of the population. That means you're normal when it comes to caffeine metabolism. If you see AC, that's a heterozygous. So the A is the mutation. There really is no change with that as far as how much we or how fast or slow we metabolize caffeine. And if you see an AA, that means you have the homozygous mutation for caffeine metabolism. Now, this is where it gets tricky. Most people think that a mutation is bad, but in this instance, I, being a massive coffee lover, think it's a good thing. So if you have the genetic mutation, the homozygous mutation, you see AA, that means that you metabolize caffeine pretty quickly through the body. That means that you could drink it all day long and not feel jitters, not feel any ill effects from the caffeine. It won't impact your ability to sleep at night, and it will actually boost your physical activity. So if you are an elite athlete and you've been told definitely do caffeine pre-race, during the race to help boost your endurance, it actually only works on a handful of people, and it only works on those people that are fast metabolizers. I am a fast metabolizer, and I am so thankful for that. My husband is a slow metabolizer, unfortunately, and I think he loves coffee a lot more than I do, and that's a lot because I love coffee. So just because you can drink caffeine all day doesn't mean you should, because caffeine is a diuretic. So if you're drinking it all day, it is leaching water from the body, causing you to urinate, which can increase your chances of becoming dehydrated. So if you are a big coffee drinker, make sure that you're hydrating with water as well. So 2 waters for every 1 coffee that you have, same ounces. 8 ounces of coffee, you should have 16 ounces of water. Okay, so let's kind of talk about the downsides of being a slow caffeine metabolizer. Where you going, Betty? So you'll know if you don't have any genetic information, you'll know if you're a slow metabolizer if you get jittery after 1-2 couple of cups of coffee, if you're feeling the jitters, if you feel like your heart's racing, if you've got palpitations, sweaty palms, any type of irritability, or if you kind of crash after you have a cup of coffee. That means that you are a normal metabolizer. Some people will say slow, but you metabolize caffeine just like most of the population. You metabolize it at a normal rate. We'll call it normal. So you can figure out if you have a normal CYP1A2 if you feel jittery. So if you drink a cup of coffee on an empty stomach and you got the jitters, or even with food, you feel like, oh, I can't have coffee in the afternoon, I'm going to be up all night, then you're probably a normal or slow metabolizer when it comes to caffeine. And here's why it matters. Aside from fast metabolizers getting away with drinking coffee all day and getting the awesome effects of boosted athletic performance when they're drinking coffee before or during any athletic races or anything like that, slow metabolizers have some downsides. They have some health effects of having slow metabolism when it comes to caffeine. So if you're a normal metabolizer, the more coffee you drink in a day, the greater risk you are for having a non-fatal heart attack or a myocardial infarction. For fast metabolizers, there's no increased risk from caffeine intake. So if you are a slow metabolizer, if you drink coffee in the evening and you feel like it's going to keep you up all night, if you're jittery, if you get heart racing from coffee, you should be limiting your coffee intake to 8 ounces a day, and that is it. Anything north of that, and you're increasing your chances of having a non-fatal heart attack. Now, if you have the occasional second cup, like once in a blue moon, I don't think that's going to be a big deal. But if you are a slow metabolizer and you're regularly drinking 2 to 3 cups of coffee a day, I would definitely work on pulling that back, or maybe switching to a good quality decaf, or maybe trying Orzo coffee or something called Dandy Blend, which is basically like a tea coffee. So you have a lot of options out there if you're a coffee lover. A lot of times people just like the sensation of, having the warm cup and the smell of the coffee and things like that versus the caffeine itself. Okay, so in the blog, I linked a nice chart from a study, and it shows that there was pretty much no risk of any type of myocardial infarction or heart attack for people that had the mutation who were fast metabolizers. Their odd ratio was about the same, north of 4 cups of coffee a day. And you can see with those who are normal metabolizers that for every increase in caffeine consumption, that increased their risk of heart attack. The average cup of coffee contains about 160 milligrams of caffeine. So that's kind of where you need to, or what you need to think about, because we're going to talk about some other sources of caffeine here in just a minute. And again, that's just for like a specific roast. Every roast is going to be different. Lighter roast has more caffeine. If you're, espresso has caffeine for the size of it. It has quite a bit. Let's see. And so aside from non-fatal heart attacks, normal metabolizers also have an increased risk for high blood pressure and impaired glucose metabolism, which leads into insulin resistance, which eventually leads into diabetes. So not only do you get the possibility of having a heart attack, you also get the increased risk, or the increased blood pressure and the increased risk of developing diabetes. So kind of lots of fun things for people who metabolize caffeine at a normal rate. Let's see what else we have. Okay, so just thinking about coffee in general, right? So we said 8 ounces. In this study that's referenced in the blog, they used 250 mils, which is about 8 ounces. It's a little less than 8 ounces, or a little more than 8 ounces. So an 8-ounce cup of coffee is really what you should be sticking with a day. If you're not a coffee drinker, you need to be thinking about other sources of coffee. For instance, soda. Soda has about 75 milligrams per 12 ounces. So if you're drinking 2 sodas a day, you're getting about the same amount of caffeine as is in 8 ounces of coffee. So if you're not a coffee drinker, but you're slamming several sodas a day and you're a slow metabolizer, you might want to pull back on your soda. You want to pull back on your soda for a whole host of other reasons, but just sheerly for the caffeine piece, that's definitely a reason to pull back. Black tea has about 45 milligrams in an 8-ounce cup. So if you're a slow metabolizer and you like tea, you could certainly switch to tea from coffee and have several cups of black tea for the same amount of caffeine that you would get for the 8-ounce cup of coffee. Chai tea is about the same, 45 milligrams per 8 ounces. Chocolate. So a lot of people don't think about this. There's quite a bit of caffeine in chocolate. in one bar of chocolate, so a regular, chocolate bar, there's about 70 milligrams. So if you have, let's say, a tea, an 8 to 10 ounce cup of tea, and then you have a chocolate bar, and then maybe later in the day you also have a soda, all not amazing choices, but you're getting much more caffeine than the body can handle, and so we want to pull that back. Decaf coffee, a lot of people don't think about this. Decaf actually does have caffeine in it, but it's quite a reduced amount. So in 16 ounces of coffee, you're only getting about 12 milligrams of caffeine. So there's a little bit in there, not a whole lot. So 6 milligrams per 8 ounces. And then you have to think about things like coffee flavored cereals or ice creams. All of those are going to have actual coffee. Chocolate with the little espresso beans on top of it. All of that's going to have caffeine in it. And then medications. So if you're a big Excedrin fan, Excedrin has about 65 milligrams per 2 caps. So all things to think about when you are determining whether you're a slow metabolizer or a fast metabolizer. Again, if you're a slow metabolizer, you're going to feel the jitters in the afternoon. If you have coffee at night, you're going to be awake all night. Jitters if you have, more than 2 cups of coffee. And then if you were to have coffee in the afternoon or evening, it would keep you up all night. If you don't have any type of ancestry DNA or 23andMe raw data, that's a really good way to determine if you're a slow metabolizer. If you already know you're the type of person that can drink coffee all day long and you don't get the jitters, you can take a nap, you can go to sleep, and none of it affects you, then there's a really good chance that you're probably a fast metabolizer. Fast metabolizer gets the benefits of the increased athletic performance when having caffeine before and during endurance races, whether it's bike riding, running, swimming, anything like that. Slow metabolizers don't get that benefit because they're not metabolizing the caffeine fast enough to utilize the benefits from it, the increased endurance. And then for slow metabolizers, you want to stick to 8 ounces of coffee a day or 160 milligrams of caffeine if you're not a coffee drinker. So if you're a soda drinker, if you're an energy drink consumer, if you are a chocolate lover, maybe you're a huge fan of chocolate flavor or coffee flavored ice cream and you have several bowls throughout the day, plus a black tea, plus a soda, and then maybe some chocolate. You're probably getting well over your 160 milligrams of caffeine a day. So that is it. That's kind of caffeine metabolism in a nutshell. Again, check out the blog. You'll be able to see the genetic information and where to look for that if you have Ancestry DNA or 23andMe raw data. And that is it. I don't see any questions. And so, yeah, I'll see you guys next Tuesday. Next Tuesday, we're talking about saturated fat in your genetic makeup. So lots of nuggets from the Nutrigenomics conference. This one was pretty interesting to me. I had heard about the coffee one before, but this one just floored me. So anybody that's a massive keto lover is going to not like me any more than they already do because I don't like the keto diet anyway. So that's it. I'll see you guys next Tuesday. And if you have any questions, let me know. Have an awesome evening. Bye.